Alright, well, I came home today and I was walking around the backyard and I found something very interesting down here at the bottom of this plum tree. Now, this plum tree is maybe 10 years old, if that, maybe 10, 12 years old, and it's never really fruited. It flowered a little bit, but it's had issues since we moved here about 4 years ago. It had a bunch of lower branches that were coming out that were all dead, just kind of coming out just like this, and like an upside down hand. And it's got this disease. It's not even a disease. It's basically a type of fungus, and it affects prunus trees that aren't necessarily native to this area, and it goes all the way up. I mean, look at these. Look at this. Look at the black stuff on the tips of the branches. These are some of the healthier branches over there, if you can see that. And there's a whole bunch of it right there. And so just in this area of eastern Tennessee, it can be probably in other areas, but you get this fungus, this black fungus that affects pit fruit, anything other than peaches and nectarines and wild native plums. Now, I've talked about this tree many, many times. This is just a normal grafted fruit tree that someone bought from a nursery or from Walmart or wherever, and they put it in their backyard, and either they pruned it or didn't prune it, or for whatever reason, you know, there's been so many things that have been done wrong with this tree that have led to this issue with being very susceptible to the disease, not really producing fruit, having a bunch of dead branches, and these are all, you know, suckers, basically new growth that's grown off of there, and now these are dead. And I was going to cut this down this winter, and I just didn't get around to it. Now, what I was going to do, or what I'm still going to do, is coppice this tree. Now, coppicing is where you cut it down around the winter solstice in the wintertime, and you cut it down above the ground, and it allows the roots, the tree that you cut down, to grow back again. And I'm going to show you coppicing over here. I did do a maple tree, and I've got a Buddha in the middle of it. It's pretty cool. But this is the main point. This tree down here was grafted. And you can see the different, totally different type of bark. This is a really dark bark. It's dark brown. It doesn't really have, you know, like a shaggy type of bark. And you can see that this stuff right here, this plum tree that they grafted onto here, has got a really light colored bark, and it's really almost like a birch tree. It's got like really thin bark. This isn't the case. This is some type of wild plum down here that they used as rootstock, and they planted the tree with the graft like they tell you to do, about 6 to 8 inches above the ground. And this is the graft. Now, not every graft is good. Not every graft is useful. The reason fruit trees are grafted is because it's easy. Thomas Jefferson said that with the invention, not even the invention, the common practice of grafting fruit trees, people can now eat their fruit instead of drinking it. You know, there was a lot of inconsistencies when it came to apples and pears and a lot of other things. But he did say, Thomas Jefferson did say, that pit fruit, like plums, peaches, cherries, grow almost true to the parent fruit. So if you eat a cherry or a plum and you plant that, you're going to get almost the same thing grown when you grow it from seed. Apples, you don't know what the hell you're going to get. Pears, you don't know what the hell you're going to get. Same thing. They're very genetically diverse, and you know, you got to plant about 1,000 of them to get one good, sweet, big one. Otherwise, you get some. I like the little sour apples and everything like that. I like seed-grown fruit, even seed-grown apples and seed-grown pears. They're smaller, but they're all different. Now I'm going to walk around and show this grafted plum tree. You know, people ask all the time about grafting. I'm not anti-grafting, but I think it's unnecessary in most circumstances. And if you happen to get a grafted tree, if you do what they don't tell you to do, you know, it seems that nurseries inevitably know this is going to happen, which causes you to cut this damn thing down and go back there and buy another fruit tree. Because, hey, they're usually right down the street. That's where you got this one. But oh, it's a dwarf, it's only going to get this big, and yada, 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 yada. Okay. If you want a dwarf tree, you just prune it to the size that you need it. You keep it within reach and stuff like that. But what you want to do, if you do have a grafted fruit tree, which I have many, you plant the graft below the ground. It's not going to rot. Live trees will not rot. And the reason why is because this is a stress point. This tree here happened to live through all the extremes of weather, you know, dryness and lots of water and cold winters and everything, even while it was young. Okay, and for a majority of, I'd say about maybe 10 or 15% of grafted fruit trees that you plant like this right here will get disconnected. This tree itself will amputate right there. As soon as times get tough, it's going to start cutting off appendages. And this is not natural growth. It doesn't flow normally. You don't have normal flow from the roots to the tips of water, to the tips of the leaves. So it will amputate this. So a lot of the times what you will have is you will have a fruit tree that you planted 2 years ago that died off, and you have suckers growing off of the roots, or the rootstock, so to speak, and you have a completely, totally different fruit tree growing down here than you would up here. And with apples or pears, you usually get a crab apple, plums, you know, you've got wild plums down here, and peaches, you've got seed-grown peaches that they use for rootstock. I'm talking about rootstock. So sometimes rootstocks, I usually buy rootstock seedlings and plant those because they're healthier. It's what they graft these damn things onto anyways. They're tough, they're strong, they produce fruit. It might not be a named variety or something that's, you know, the size of your face, you know, that kind of thing. You know, it's usually smaller fruit, and it's good fruit. But guess what? You don't have issues like this later on down the road. And if you're going to be spending the money and investing in a food forest and turning your grassy backyard into permaculture, you got to look down the road. You got to think ahead that, hey, these grafted fruit trees that I'm buying, even though you bought them from online and they were all, they weren't potted, you know, they were bare root fruit trees, but they were grafted. Eventually, it's going to cause an issue. This happens a lot with citrus trees. If you go to old citrus orchards where the trees are more than 10 or 15 years old and they're grafted, they have, you know, a mandarin orange grafted onto a wild citrus rootstock, or citrandarin, or they use citramello. They use these hybrid rootstocks that was created by Dr. Swingle. That's the majority of rootstocks they use for citrus. So knowing that, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to argue with me in the comment section. I've had this happen many, many times. Just go around and look at old grafted fruit trees and tell me that it's all good. You know, it's all good. No, it's not all good. It's convenient to the nursery and the people that are selling you the fruit trees. The best way to get the fruit variety that you want is rooted cuttings. When you take a branch and you root it, you don't have as many of them that are going to root. You're going to probably lose about majority of them, but you'll eventually get some rooted cuttings, and then they're growing their own roots naturally. You plant that. You can find that with certain things like mulberries. Mulberries root really easily. Certain trees, even peaches, root very easily, and you can get rooted cuttings. So if you want to avoid this, look for seedlings. Seedling peaches, seedling plums, anything seedling. If you can go underneath an old fruit tree like this and dig up the baby seedlings that grew from the fruit that just fell, that's the best way to do it. That's going to be a healthy tree. You won't have to worry about issues like this. And what this eventually caused was for the tree to eventually die right here.
it didn't kill the whole tree. Part of it is still alive and still connected to this wild plum rootstock down here. You can see this part right here. But a woodpecker has come by and showed me something that I did not know. And half of this tree, all the way to the inside of it, is rotten and infested with either ants or termites or something. It found a bunch of goodies in there and ate the hell out of them. It also found something up in here, and there's like a crack in the wood right there. But this branch right here died off last year. And yeah, so grafts cause issues down the road. Let's be real, people. It's cool. It's awesome when you can take a crab apple and graft Granny Smith onto it, or a plum and have 5 or 6 different varieties of plums growing on there. But let's be real. You are grafting a totally different, usually a different species or different variety onto another one, and it can cause issues. It did not grow naturally that way, and just because it grows back and it didn't die, and it actually produces fruit for you eventually, does not mean it's the best way of doing it. It is a way of doing it. Grafted fruit trees are a way that people, nurseries especially, can get fruit production, and then usually after 10-15 years they cut those down and replace them. They actually end up replacing their nursery. You know, you don't have a lot of old nurseries or orchards because of issues like this. You know, you don't see 50-year-old peach trees. You know, if you think about that, you know, a lot of peaches don't live very long. Their life cycle includes growing. The seed grows in the ground. It grows back. You know, that's how it does. You know, the whole cloning fruit trees and stuff, it's nice, but it can cause issues, and here's one of them. And I'm showing you guys this. So, the best way to avoid this down the road, where half of it dies and the woodpecker and the, you know, termites and everything else, and you've got half a dead tree that you look at until you decide to cut it down. Rooted cuttings. If you can get rooted cuttings of fruit trees, that's one way. Another way is seedlings. Seed-grown peaches, plums, cherries, even apples and pears. You know, if you got to get apples and pears, just bury the graft. Put this below the ground. It allows eventually this right here to go into contact with wet soil and grow its own roots. So it's not completely, you're just using this as a way to get started. Use the graft as a way to get some roots on there fast and easy, and then eventually allow this to produce its own roots before this happens down the road. You know, if this was planted with the graft down, I could have a nice plum tree here. I don't think this was the only reason. The variety could be better also too, but I'm gonna cut this tree right here. I'm probably gonna do it, I don't know, I was gonna do it this winter and stuff, but I might have to do it pretty soon because half of it's dead. Or I could just leave it. It's not gonna cause any issues and stuff. It's just falling out. But yeah, I'm going to coppice this and allow new branches to come off of it. It'll be a plum bush, essentially. But at least I'll probably get some fruit off of it, off of this wild rootstock that I have no idea what the fruit's going to be. It's going to be exciting to see the fruit on that. But this thing hasn't done nothing. We've been here for 4 years, and I should have cut it down a long time ago, but this is an example, guys. You know, I'm showing this so that way we all learn together. And I don't have anything against grafting. I'm not anti-arborist, you know, any of that stuff. But you guys can use this as an example. Keep this in the back of your head. This is what happens to grafted fruit trees, a majority of them, later on down the road. You have rootstock that grows independently from the scion. The scion wants to get big and fat, and you have issues where they're connected. You know, you have issues there. So let's go look at a maple tree up here. That's a wild maple. And it was also half dead, just like that plum when we moved in. And I think I cut it down the first winter, about a year, first year we were here. And this is it. Can't really see with the leaves not on it and everything. But there we go.
You can see all the new good growth on there. It's going to be a maple bush. But the first year, when I cut it down, the next year, I had all these new suckers growing out of there. New little trees growing out of the base. And you can see them all down here. So, this is where I cut the tree. I put my little Buddha right there. And I wove these branches into each other to create like a little nest for them. And eventually all this stuff is going to grow in, and I don't know, maybe it'll kind of like hold them in there or something like that. But I thought it was pretty cool. You know, here was a dead tree that I used the wood for, and a bunch of new ones grew out of the base of it, and I was able to create something cool from it, you know. And these branches were pretty small when I did all this, and now they're getting pretty fat, growing into each other. And it's interesting. I'm interested to see how it's going to turn out. And I mean, hell, I can always just cut this down. I planned on using these for stuff anyways, you know, for making things and everything. Some you know, maple branches about the size of your thumb. A bunch of different things I can use for that. But instead I just wove them all together and made a little Buddha stand for my Buddha. So that's coppicing. That's what I'm going to hopefully do to the plum tree that just completely rotted out from the inside out at the graft. And I wanted to share that with you guys because that's what I came home to today. And I noticed it. I just came in the backyard and I was like, that does not look right. It looks like something was in that tree. And you can see it. So thanks for watching, guys. Y'all take care.